Welcome to a live show. It is the late show as well, but we've got a packed evening for you planned. Lots of things to share with you, so sit tight, don't go away, call a friend, call your neighbor, call your wife, call your partner, and sit down and watch this program. We've got a mixture of things. You know, what the Palestinians don't want you to know is the title of one of the pieces that I'm going to be playing in tonight. I'm going to be in several segments, so it gives you an opportunity to have your say live at revelationtv.com. Also, an amazing testimony. This is from one who's escaped, as it were, from the hands of Hamas, who was in the tunnels, who was in the underground system. Just a beautiful testimony by a young Israeli girl, or woman, and such innocence as well, and such honoring to God. It was her prayer that saved her life, and it's quite interesting, the background, as you will be hearing from her herself. And Tim Vince is with me tonight as well. Tim?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a privilege. Privilege just to hear her testimony.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah, we had a preview just before we started. We've been here quite early, so you know we want to get into it, and we've got a lot to share as well. So I just want to say, let's get to it in that sense. But this testimony is quite long, and we want to give credit to PBS, which is the Public Broadcasting Services, which are free in the United States. I actually did a program there myself in Tampa, Florida, many years ago, and also to Inside Out, who are the ones that have given us, well, permission, unquote, for doing and showing you this Sapir Cohen. And I want you to just sit back and take on board just how precious this young Israeli woman's testimony is. It is something quite unique, and it might make you cry, as it did for me when I watched it yesterday. Have a look at this.
1 year on from the Hamas attacks of last October 7th, the war, pain, anguish, and heartbreak continue on a daily basis. And the persistent memories of that day are no more acute than for those who survived both the attack and the subsequent kidnapping into Gaza. Sapir Cohen was on kibbutz Nir Oz that day and held for nearly 2 months by Hamas. Nick Schifrin met with her recently, a woman transformed by appalling cruelty, but who is now finding her own voice.
On the morning of October the 7th, a tide of terror rolled into kibbutz Nir Oz. They broadcast, kidnapped, and killed residents and entered this home, where Sapir Cohen and her boyfriend Sasha Trufanov were hiding in a bedroom. Cohen accepted her fate.
I didn't send the message to my parents. I didn't want to say something with the meaning of goodbye. So I decided just to say my prayer, and I'm saying that again and again and again, and finally I felt something deep inside of me. I felt peace.
As she was taken, she felt overwhelming terror and profound regret.
God, please, it can't be. It can't be. I never did something I never did something meaningful in my life. And that was my last wish. Just keep me alive and give me the chance to do something.
Tonight, we honor a true heroine of our nation, a woman who embodies the strength and resilience of Israel. Please join me in welcoming Sapir Cohen.
My name is Sapir Cohen. I was in captivity 55 days. My story begins 6 months ago. I felt that something very bad will happen to me. I didn't know why I feel like that, because there is no reason for it. During the time, I felt that maybe I have a very bad illness in my body and I just need to discover it. I decided to go to many doctors and I did all the possible tests. One of the doctors told me, yes, you have some virus in your body and this virus can even be dangerous, but it's not dangerous as your feelings. I didn't believe this doctor, and for the first time in my life, I decided to pray. I was looking for a prayer for complete recovery, and one day a prayer appeared in my Instagram. It was a chapter in Tehillim, and they wrote there that if you read it for 30 days, you will be healthy and miracles will happen to you. So I say, it sounds like a great deal. I want it. From that day, I say this prayer every day, 30 days. The last day was the October 7. After 2 weeks, I remember the prayer, and it's very surprised me because all my life I needed to cheat in the history exams because I couldn't remember. And now I remember even words that I don't understand their meaning. On the last week, the kidnapping week, I say this prayer, and it was the first time that I noticed to the words that I'm saying. And this prayer is not related to medicine, it's related to war, and God saved me from these enemies. And I say, why I pray this? It's not what I wanted. From which war I praying to be saved? On October 7, I understood the meaning of my prayer. Me and my boyfriend Sasha, we planned to visit his parents in Kibbutz Nir Oz to celebrate Simchat Torah. In that weekend, Sasha doesn't want to come, and it was very strange because every time he told me, when I say to my parents that I come, I never cancel because it might hurt my mother. But in that weekend, he say, I don't want to go, and I don't know why. Unfortunately, I convinced him, and we arrived to the kibbutz. On Saturday, I woke up at 6 at morning because of the bombs. It was a barrage of rockets, very strong. It was like boom, 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 boom. We were in guest room with no shelter, and we couldn't find even 20 seconds of silence to run to the parents' house to enter to the shelter. So I said to Sasha, I can't wait to explode here. So maybe we can lie down near the wall. It feels more safe. And we're lying down near the wall, maybe an hour of bombs. After an hour, we get a message from his mother, and the message is, there are terrorists in Be'eri. Be'eri, it's kibbutz 15 minutes from Nir Oz. We entered to Ynet, and we saw an article. Terrorists are slaughtering us, and the army doesn't come. I saw this article, and I was very scared. I didn't know what to think. After 2 minutes, another message. Sasha looked at the phone and turned it around. And I knew what the message, but I didn't want to believe. So I asked him, Sasha, what the message? And he told me, no matter what, just be quiet. I took a blanket. I put it over myself like this. I didn't want to see anything. and we just lying down under the bed because there is no place to hide. After I heard Allahu Akbar, maybe hundreds of terrorists enter to the kibbutz, and I heard things explode, and the screaming, the terrorists screaming, and the people that killed by these savages screaming. And it's heard like they go home by home and shooting everything, everyone. And you just wait to your turn. In that moment, I understood the meaning of my prayer. And I was terrified. I was shaking. All my body was water. But I say the prayer again and again. And when I say it, I felt something deep inside of me. I felt peace. And I say, how can I feel peace in this situation? I heard the terrorists come close and close to us. And what they did outside, it was a very big chaos. And finally, they go to our house. They shut the door, they broke it, they get inside, they just took everything and broke everything. And then I heard my boyfriend scream. They took me from the blanket and took us separately. When I go outside, I saw my boyfriend with the knees on the floor, with the hands over his head, bleeding face. They beat him. When I saw him, it seems like the end. But I say, God, it can't be. It just can't be the end. They put me on bike with 2 terrorists, and we go to Gaza. When I came inside Gaza, I saw maybe thousands of people, thousands of innocent civilians in the street. They are all encouraged the terrorists. They are all come to touch me and to beat me, and they beat me so strong that I put the hands over my head and I'm saying, God, I don't want to die here. But finally the 2 terrorists saved me, because the main goal is in most of the cases is to take you alive. In Gaza, I was 1 month in houses, 1 month in tunnels, in hard conditions. But every day I felt miracles. I think that one of the biggest miracles that I felt is that I understood that I supposed to be there. I was with another hostage, a young girl, 16 years old. I met her on the first day. When I saw her, she was crying, she was terrified. And I saw her and say, God, this is enough for me to understand that I need to be here. I want to keep this girl. I want to make her happy. From the moment that I decided to take this responsibility, I felt so powerful. And I could make every bad thing to funny thing. And this girl, she doesn't understand, how can I do that? And even the terrorists didn't understand, how can I be happy in this situation? One day, one of them drew a memorial candle, and he wrote my name on this candle. And I was very angry. And I'm saying, why? Why you wrote my name? And he told me, I don't love you. You're my enemy. I hate you. But when you are here in this place, all this place is lighting. And I'll say, what? I can't believe that I heard it from a terrorist. And every day I say the three things. The first is my prayer. The second is, thank you, God, that you sent me to this place because I feel all the power that you gave me and I know how to use it to keep myself and to keep the other hostages. And the last thing is, thank you, God, about all the angels that you sent me to this hell. When I came back to Israel and I saw how many people prayed for me in Israel, in all the world, how many people decided to be more good people because they understand that this thing will bring me back, I understood that all the angels that I felt, they are not imaginary. Unfortunately, there are many hostages there that don't feel these angels. I saw some groups of hostages that get for drink salt water that destroy their body, that get for eat just one pita every day. Some of them have very serious illnesses. Some of them are injured because these savages beat them or shot them. These hostages, they don't get the appropriate treatment. They don't get the appropriate medicine. In my first day, I saw another hostage, an old man, 85 years old. The terrorist beat him so strong that after a few days he died. The hostages think every day about their families. They don't even know who's still alive and who's dead. And these thoughts kill them every day more and more. My boyfriend is still there. All his family kidnapped or killed. The hostages don't have time, and we need to do everything, but everything, to bring them home now and alive. Thank you.
So powerful. Tim, what did you get from that?
Well, I was listening to her, but then I looked at the back screen. It had the ribbon. It had the name Beit Tefillah, a congregation, which means house of prayer. And she's talking about prayer the whole time. And it was so genuine. She said, it's the first time I've ever prayed.
Yeah, I know. But she started praying 6 months before October the 7th, 2023. The Lord did something to her in the sense of arming her and preparing her to do something quite special. Yeah. And it was her genuineness, her soft-hearted, lovely spirit that she had that moved the soldier, the Hamas soldier. She was in, I mean, I've seen an extended version of this. And the Hamas soldier where she was staying was in another room, obviously set aside to hold her as hostage. And the Hamas soldier had his wife and his children and everything. And when he came in to speak to her over the few days that she was with under his command, he was saying, I hate you. I'm supposed to hate you, but you know, I feel something else for you. You're my enemy, but you know, what is it with you? You know, it was.
And the whole room was filled with light. And
yes,
that's
the whole fill. Here's what he said. Yeah. When you're here, I sit. The whole room is filled with light. And she actually met Yahya Sinwar as well, and because she was put in underground as well when she was taken from the Hamas soldiers' home. And it didn't come out in here as well, but the old man that was fed so poorly and beaten, 85-year-old man, they beat him and he died, you know. and there was this pita bread or some sort of just a little bit of bread, and no water, no sunshine, nothing, you know, and our hostages lived under extremely difficult circumstances. But she was a shining light, and that's what God had put on her heart. Let me do something significant, was the way that it started off.
That's why she was so upset.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something that speaks to all of us.
Yeah.
To do something meaningful in
Yeah.
the time we've got. The other thing that occurred to me was just that her boyfriend is still
Yeah.
either dead or in captivity. So
Yeah.
that hasn't been resolved yet, has it?
No. Right, we want to go on to the next piece that I feel that I should be sharing with you tonight, and that was something that we'll be going into. It's really under the title of What the Palestinians Don't Want You to Know. So we'll be looking at that. But this is very interesting what this young man, I think he's a young man, he's the one who's actually made this. He's called Israel My Channel. But before we go to that, I want to show you this map, because on this map is the area that the Arab nations have, and we will see that a lot of the Jews that were living there around or prior to 1948, they were quite happy to be living in those areas, but they all were given notice in 1948 to leave, and to leave everything behind them. And you can see the small area, white area in that whole landmass is just what Israel is living with. And yet it had the, given by God in, 3,000 years ago, much larger area of landmass. And in fact, even the landmass which you see as known as Jordan today was part of Israel's landmass given by God. So to put it into perspective, we talk and hear about, Tim, how the ethnic cleansing is going on according to those who want to side with the Palestinians, but they're ignorant, if I may say, about the whole history. And so I don't know whether you want to just say something about this before we go to the video.
Map, it showed Israel, but this little exclave, it's not an enclave, it's actually just a little extension of that massive Arab world, Gaza.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't this massive Arab world take, absorb those who are in this little, intrusion or protrusion into the southern part of Israel?
Yes. So let's have a look at this. I've broken them up into small parts. This is only like 2 minutes, and then we've got little segments, so it's a lot easier to deal with. But yeah, so we've got the big changes that happen to Gaza. Have a look at this first clip.
Big changes are about to happen in Gaza. We saw the march of millions of people from south to north of Gaza. The media was celebrating this as a symbol of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. But ladies and gentlemen, this is far from being over. An earthquake of geopolitical changes is coming, and it will affect not only Israel, but also the entire world. You see, if we think about refugees in the context of the Near East, we always are bombarded by this Palestinians, Palestinian problem, Palestinian suffering, all of this. Lie that we will expose right now. So let's look at some of the countries I mentioned before. So here we have Yemen, 55,000 before 48 and now less than 50 people. The Jewish community in Yemen used to be ancient and with rich traditions. Some even say that their relationship with this part of the world started when Queen Sheba, who some believe came from those territories, visited the kingdom that was created during Solomon's reign. Here you can see some historical pictures of the Jewish community in Yemen. Those pictures were taken at the beginning of the 20th century. And what you see is a beautiful community, but a community that is living in horrible conditions. They are living in ghettos, and they are very, very poor. So to understand what happened to this community, we need to realize that the Jewish community in the Near East, in the Middle East, in Africa, found themselves in a very difficult spot when Islam became the majority religion in this part of the world. And Islam, as we know, well, it did not spread in a peaceful way, but it spread by conquest, by sword. And everybody who was opposing it was basically slain. That was the story of the expansion of Islam. And suddenly, all those Jewish communities that were spread out in the Middle East, they found themselves under a religion that wasn't very tolerant. Everybody who's not Muslim suddenly is an infidel. They are second-class citizens and they are persecuted.
Now, under the Muslim rule, those Jews that were living in those lands had to become dhimmis. And dhimmis mean what, Tim?
Second-class citizens. A great book by Bat-Yeor was called Dhimmitude, and that was the state of the Jews in those lands.
Yeah, so the Jews, and so many people don't understand this, the history. All they can look at is 1948 and think that Israel just came in and took the land from the Palestinians.
And even this whole idea of what they call the golden age of Islam, the Jews were still second-class citizens.
Absolutely. They were made to feel inferior, but be inferior. There was lots of things which they had to comply with, and they had to even pay a dhimmi tax, but they were absolutely looked down upon and had to suffer the consequences. Many people don't know that history, and I'm just hoping that you will get some of this tonight. We'll go to the next piece, which is the relationships between the Muslims and the Jews in those Arab countries, including dhimmitude.
And what regulated this relationship between Jews and Muslims was the so-called Charter of Omar. Omar, or Umar, was the second caliph after Muhammad, and he created this charter, this set of rules that regulated the relationship between Arabs and Jews. And the people that were not Arabs were called dhimmis. Now we will quickly look at those rules because I think it's very important and it shows what Arabs think of Jews today. And it's based on those rules, those sets of beliefs. So, rule number 1. Dhimmis were not allowed to build new churches, synagogues, or monasteries. So, no new places of worship. Dhimmis could repair the old buildings of worship, but they were not allowed to expose on them any signs of their religion. So, no Star of David, no crosses, nothing like that. There were certain dress codes also introduced. And what is interesting here is that for the Jews specifically, a badge was often used in many of the Muslim countries, and the badge was yellow. So everybody had to wear a certain badge that would tell everybody that he is a Jew. Now, this is something that comes up much later in history and is also used by the Nazi Germany. But it's interesting that it actually originates over here, so very, very early on, and it's introduced with the Muslim religion. And when Hitler came to power, the Mufti of Jerusalem, High Amin al-Husseini, actually met with Hitler and told him, don't expel the Jews, because if you will, they will come to the Holy Land. So just get rid of them, eliminate. And he was actually involved in also exterminating many Jews in what was then called Palestine.
So you see, the hatred was actually started a long time ago, at the time Muhammad basically, but coming all the way through to Hitler.
Correct, and Haj Amin al-Husseini was effectively the founder of Hamas because he founded the Muslim Brotherhood, and then from the Muslim Brotherhood Hamas have derived. So yeah, the evil is passed from generation to generation.
Yeah. Okay, well, talking about refugees as a quite popular expression about people who are being, if you like, taken from their lands and becoming refugees in another person's land, maybe. You know what Donald Trump has been saying as well, but maybe there are some sensible things about what Donald Trump is saying. I know a lot of you would disagree, but let's have a look at this next segment. This is the Jews that had to flee from these Arab countries, often leaving everything they owned behind.
So, if a Muslim tells you that the Jews and Arabs lived in peace before the creation of Israel, well, it's a lie. The Jews were persecuted, they were treated like slaves, and very often there were massacres, there were pogroms, synagogues were burned, children were taken from their parents if they did not convert to Muslim religion, to Islam. So it was not a good coexistence. But let's go back to the Jews of Yemen as an example, showing us what happened to a lot of the Jews in Arab Muslim countries. So when Israel announced its independence, the situation of Jews in Yemen got even more dire. They were persecuted like never before. But they couldn't just leave Yemen, nobody would allow them. So they actually had to travel to a spot called Aden, which was a British-run colony in Yemen. Now, for many of them, this was a very dangerous road, for hundreds of miles, kilometers, through the desert, through the mountains, but they were very determined, and they made it. They made it to Aden. A lot of them made it to Aden after this exhausting and long road, but they had hope, and Israel was also preparing to transport those Jewish people from Aden back to Israel, to their homeland. Barefoot, with little possessions, some that were lucky were on donkeys. They came to Aden because they heard there is hope. Their salvation came in a form that they have never imagined. A plane, a machine, something modern that would transport them from this medieval age of no technology to a new country where they would be treated fairly. Imagine, what are the hopes? What are the feelings? How are they waiting for so many years, for so many centuries, being faithful to their God and understanding that He has not forgotten them. But they remember the ancient words of the Bible. Tell the people of Israel how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. The wings of eagles, that was the name of the operation that Israel gave to the rescue of Yemen Jews. In the following years, several of such operations were carried out to get out almost all the Jews of Yemen to Israel. And of course, it wasn't just a simple move. It was a fight for life. If they would stay in Yemen, they would be exterminated. And even after so many years, the Muslim people in Yemen are still threatening the Jews, which we saw in recent conflict between Israel and Hamas. Rockets were shot from Yemen thousands of kilometers towards Israel. Big rockets. Now, it is very important also to see the rest of the story and see how the refugees, not only from Yemen, were treated in Israel. When the Jewish people returned from all over the world to the Promised Land, they were not treated as a burden, as a problem for the country. They were treated with great joy, with a celebration. Everybody was happy, not only those that returned, but also those that waited for them all this time. And although Israel was their dream, it certainly wasn't the Garden of Eden. Hundreds of years of Turkish rule left the land barren with no trees and many rocks that had to be removed. But the Jewish people were happy to begin cultivating the land, to work on it, to work hard on it, because they knew that this is their land, and here they finally can feel safe. And while Jewish people were returning from Arab countries where they were thrown out, where they were persecuted, they were given the opportunity to take their lives in their own hands and determine their future. And what about Arab refugees that left to other Arab countries like Egypt, like Jordan, like Syria? Well, they were left in camps, often surrounded by a wire fence, and they were treated as animals. That was the difference. And while the life of newcomers to Israel, the Jewish newcomers, was not easy, you had to work hard, you were given an opportunity, hope of better life. There was a plan of taking in so many refugees. As we said, almost 1 million. And you know, this is as much as the Arab refugees that escaped to Jordan, to Syria, to Lebanon, to Egypt. 1 million Jewish refugees from Arab countries and 1 million Arab refugees that were created when Israel was created. The difference? The Arab refugees still live like this, in camps, segregated from the rest of the population, somewhere in the desert, away from civilization, and constantly given money, more money and more money and more money, but with no opportunity to work, to develop themselves. I mean, even water has to be brought to these places. There is no future. They are just frozen in time, and everybody is keeping them like this in those horrible conditions. And many of them are used to it. They can't imagine another life because they have been receiving foreign funds for so long. They are so dependent on it, and they are used to it. Now, from that 1 million Arab refugees we had in 48, now there is almost 5 million refugees living in those camps. And it's not gonna get better. The UNRWA is only making it worse by giving the people money, food. They are totally dependent, and they do not think about being creative, about working, about trying to find a way. And this is why President Trump said that's enough. I mean, why should American taxpayers pay for this? There is no plan for those refugees. There is no future. It's just gonna get worse and worse. So it's better to cut it off now and make the people find solutions themselves. Make them be creative. Of course, this will have to happen if we are going to solve this problem, and it has to create a need in those countries they are in, those refugees like Jordan, like Syria, like Lebanon, to give those people also opportunity to get out of those camps.
So Tim, who came from Yemen that our viewers would really know very well?
Batia.
Yeah.
Batia Siegel. In fact, I knew a number in the early years of 35 years ago, and she was one of them. Richard and Yardena. Yardena was, and they're beautiful, beautiful people, we know from Batia. But to think the miracle of them coming from this ancient culture and flown into Israel, as they did from Ethiopia, it was a miracle. And it's wonderful that we've been blessed so much by them.
Yeah, absolutely. Batia's testimony on Voices from Israel is an amazing testimony to watch as well. But we need to press on. So the next segment, which we've got on this particular topic, is Gaza is a problem, and I think we'd agree with that. Let's watch this.
Now, Gaza is a major problem in all of this situation. As you can see, the population of Gaza has skyrocketed since 1947. Now it's over 2 million people living on this very small piece of land. So the people have multiplied like crazy in Gaza. And despite of billions, I'm speaking billions of dollars given to Gaza, it still looks like a slum. And it is where the terrorists just pop up like mushrooms. And it seems that President Trump and his administration understands this, that something different needs to be done if we are to solve this unsolvable situation. Something radical needs to happen.
I said to him, I'd love you to take on more, because I'm looking at the whole Gaza Strip right now, and it's a mess. It's a real mess.
You'd like Jordan to house people from Gaza?
To take people. I'd like Egypt to take people. I'm talking to General El-Sisi tomorrow, sometime, I believe. And I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. You're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing. It's it's over the centuries that's many, many conflicts, that site. And I don't know, it's something has to happen, but it's literally a demolition site right now. Almost everything's demolished.
That something needs to happen in Gaza so that there can be a future. And if you think to yourself, nah, this is not gonna happen, it's too many people, it's impossible to do. Well, it's a lot of people, that's true, but it has been done in history many, many times when you had so large populations moving. Let me give you an example from a similar time period, so 1947. This is the time that India was divided into India and Pakistan after they gained its independence from the British Empire. So suddenly you have two countries created. In India, of course, the majority of population is Hindu, and in Pakistan, Muslim. So those that found themselves in India and were Muslim very often chose to go to Pakistan, and those that were in Pakistan and they were Hindu, they moved to India. Of course, it's much more complex than that, but I'm just giving you something in a snapshot. Anyway, it is estimated that 10 to 15 million people emigrated during this time period. So it is possible to do, and even on a much bigger scale. It's just the willingness to do it. And that's the big problem, because Arab countries are not willing to find a solution for this, what is happening in Gaza. And perhaps maybe this is the best solution, to separate the Jews from the Arabs. Because the Arabs, in their nature, they have a disregard for Jewish people, which we saw in the charter of Omar. And if you're saying, well, it's unjust, why the Palestinians, Arabs, whatever you call them, should leave, why, it's their land. Well, the Jews also left in the Arab countries. They also had houses, they also had something that they had to leave. So it's not like the injustice is only happening to the Arabs. And the Jews would like to live in peace with Arabs. But it takes two sides. If you have a disregard for the Jewish people, if you treat them like a second class, and you think they are an evil coming from the devil, well, it's difficult to talk to a person like that. And you know, Israel gave a good example for the Arabs. There are Arabs living in the country of Israel, having an Israeli citizenship. This is showing you the city of Akko, where there is a lot of Arabs living, and they are living side by side with the Jewish people. So it is possible, but only when the ruling side is saying that they are equal. They should be treated the same. The Arabs have work, they have opportunities, they can go to school. It's their choice how they will live their life. In Israel, they have opportunities, and they are given freedom. In Arab countries, Jews did not have that freedom. That's the difference. And of course, it's not perfect in Israel, because even in Israel, the Arabs do have some kind of resentment for the Jews. But if you ask them, would they like to move to any other Arab country, they would say, no, 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 we are staying here. It's good here. So what will happen to Gaza? Well, it depends on the attitude of the countries around it. And if they are willing to finally treat those people like human beings and not a weapon against Israel. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope this episode was interesting for you, that you were able to learn something new. Let me know.
Yes, do let Israel, my channel, on YouTube, know that you appreciate very much that information which he shared with us tonight. Tim, what did you pick up from that last clip?
Yeah, definitely the comparison with Pakistan and India and the petition was really interesting, because that was in 1947 when the UN voted for Israel to be established. And of course, they gave a deadline. The British gave a deadline. There's going to be petition. That's never happened, in the Gaza situation. And also, the British didn't say, oh, well, we could have a few Indian settlements, in Pakistan and vice versa, because obviously it wouldn't work. Yeah. And that's quite telling. And, of course, that was a far higher number, 15 million.
I know. So, when you're talking 2 million people that are in Gaza right now, it is possible for them to migrate, as it were, to somewhere where they don't have to be living next to people that they hate and want to kill.
Exactly. Right? And Trump was asked today, I think, oh, it's terrible, 2 million people. He said, it's not that many people. Yeah, actually, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Would you introduce Julia Hartley-Brewer to us?
Yeah, she's one of these feisty sort of new presenters that they have on Talk TV, and we've got a colleague who knows her very well, worked with her. This is quite you don't get this on the mainstream. You get an interviewer just incredulous at this apologist for Hamas speaking as a so-called journalist. It's really interesting, really interesting.
Let's go back to what Hamas has said. They believe that terms of the ceasefire have been breached. They're not going to release any more hostages. Donald Trump has said all the hostages out by 12 on Saturday. We think he means midday. All the hostages, not just the next 3, all the hostages out, or all hell breaks loose. He said that's what he would do. He's been backing Israel. Do you think that would focus minds? There's no reason why Hamas couldn't release all of the hostages on Saturday, could there? All of them. Is there any argument that you, as someone who desperately cares about innocent people, those hostages are innocent people, are they not? Is there any reason why Hamas couldn't and shouldn't release them all?
Once the hostages go, and every act of kindness that has been shown to Israel has just been backlash.
Sorry? Every act of kindness?
Yes.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Every act of... What were the acts? Do tell me what the acts of kindness were. The pita bread once every 3 days for those men kept in a tunnel for 16 months? How generous, how kind.
And you're focusing on the 3 men.
Oh, silly me.
If we look at the women.
Oh, you're going to go there. You're going to go there. Didn't they look well and healthy, Yvonne? Didn't they look well? They must have had a wonderful time at that holiday camp that Hamas ran for them for the last 16 months. When you were held captive, when you were held hostage by the Taliban, you were fed. You had cigarettes. You were looked after. You weren't in fear for your life. Those women, those men, the children, the elderly, the sick, they lived every day.
And I would be in an Israeli prison, that's for sure.
Absolute abject nonsense.
We've had a doctor who was raped to death, and then the Israelis called it self-defense. When did rape become self-defense?
Well, yeah, you tell me. Let's ask your friends in Hamas, Yvonne. I'm not saying there aren't atrocities committed by some Israeli forces, and some of them end up in court, and rightly so, and they should all end up in court. I'm not defending any atrocities that are committed by any side. I want to know, what were the acts of kindness that Hamas did that have been thrown back in their face by Israel? What were those acts of kindness?
Well, they gave them goodie bags. I don't know what was in them, but they gave them gifts. They gave them little mementos, Palestinian mementos.
The acts of kindness from your hostage taker, from the man who's kidnapped you and terrified you and starved you for months. Yvonne, what's happened to you? What has happened to you?
What's happened to me, Julia, I have watched day in, day out pictures of children being blown to shreds.
Do you know who put those
by
out?
American and British bombs. I have watched war crimes being committed.
You know who put that? You know who puts those images out? Hamas. You know why we never see images of Hamas fighters being blown up? Because Hamas don't allow those out. Who put those children? Who put those innocent people in harm's way? Hamas.
Oh, that's ridiculous, Julia.
That's ridiculous. They went into Israel to massacre innocent people and they took hostages. Were they surprised that Israel struck back and wanted their hostages back? No, of course they weren't. They knew what would happen. They brought down that.
I mean, you almost don't need to say anything. All I could see is someone who is an apologist, who's defending Nazis. Seeing Haj Amin with Hitler, then you realise, the Nazis weren't defeated. The inheritors of the mantle of Nazism, they're still around today in Gaza.
And, you know, you're right. I just want to say very quickly that there are other bits that we should have been able to show, but we're out of time. But on the news today, it's talking about an asteroid that's heading possibly for Earth, and it's something the scientists today were talking about. And it could be, and they need to be able to check it out, what the size is, and they'll be able to tell that in 2028. So we're only talking 3 more years' time when it comes around on the next cycle, how large this is. If it's quite small in the matter of just meters, it won't be a problem. But if it's really large, it could even, as say the size of this studio or something like that, could even take out a city. So this is quite significant, really. Is this the way that it's going to go? When you think of some of the things that the Bible talks about, how wormwood it talks about as well, as an asteroid could actually take out and bring on Armageddon. We know Bruce Willis and all of that did that particular
The interesting
movie.
thing is, it's only in our modern era that men's hearts grow faint with fear over asteroids, because no one saw them before. So that scripture's being fulfilled.
Right. Now, we're going to finish with a song that I wrote originally in 1983. And so some of the parts of that are included in this. But it does show you what I believe is going to happen. I did this a couple of years ago. So this is called Who's Going to Save the World? And it is something we really need to take notice of. And we'll be playing this all out. And thank you for watching Revelation TV. And thank you for watching The Late Show tonight. Thank you, Tim, and to Nathan, and all those involved. God bless you.
For the powers of heaven will be shaken. Take me to your taken giant steps in technology, but will he ever get it right with ecology? Ozone layer and chemicals, pesticides and waste, to mention only but a few, to show why man's in haste. So who is going to save the world?
There's never been a time quite like this in the history of mankind, where the whole world